There comes a point in every man's life when noise becomes the enemy. When explaining yourself, defending your worth, or seeking approval becomes a trap. You talk, they don't listen. You show effort, and they take it for granted. You give, and they forget. But there's a weapon more dangerous than words, more powerful than anger, and more respected than begging: silence. When a man pushes forward in life without needing to announce every move, without seeking validation, without chasing claps or applause, that's when the world starts to take him seriously. You want results? Then speak less and execute more. Don't fight battles with words, fight them with your progress. Too many men fall into the trap of thinking that talking about their goals is the same as achieving them. It's not. Real men operate in silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because their actions are louder than anything they could ever explain. And here's the truth: when you stop explaining yourself and focus on pushing hard in silence, everything around you begins to change. People start respecting you more. Your body transforms, your income increases, your enemies become quiet, your haters begin to disappear, and those who once ignored you, they begin to ask, what changed? But you say nothing, because lions don't explain to sheep why they hunt alone. Let me take you back to a real-life example. David Goggins, former Navy SEAL. He didn't become legendary by talking. He became legendary by running through pain, suffering in silence, and doing the impossible every single day. He didn't post selfies at the gym. He didn't beg people to believe in him. He just worked. He suffered quietly. And now the world watches. Push hard, say nothing, watch everything change. Or look at history. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor of Rome, a man who ruled the world's most powerful empire and yet wrote in private journals to master himself. Not for likes, not for praise, but for discipline. He could have demanded applause. Instead, he kept his thoughts to himself and ruled with calm action. His silent strength still echoes through time. So to every man watching this, if she doubts you, if they mock your dreams, if life is testing you, don't announce what you're going to do. Just do it. Build in silence, work in darkness, and let success expose you. This video is about the power of silence, the value of quiet hard work, and why the most dangerous man in the room is the one who's not speaking, because he's too busy building. We're diving into 4 deep chapters filled with real-life stories, historical references, and powerful lessons every man must understand. Because if you truly want to change your life, you've got to get comfortable saying nothing and letting the results do the talking. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend who needs to hear this, and drop a comment below saying, "I'm building in silence." Let's begin. Chapter 1. The man who speaks less builds more. In a world that rewards noise, the strongest men are the ones who keep their mouths shut and their mission alive. The man who speaks less builds more. He knows that most people don't listen to understand. They listen to judge, compare, or gossip. So why waste your energy explaining your dreams to people who weren't built to understand your vision? The truth is, words are cheap. Execution is everything. And a silent man on a mission is a storm no one sees coming. Years ago, a young man in a small town was laughed at for being a dreamer. He told his friends he wanted to become a professional fighter, but they told him to stay quiet and stick to working at the local mill. That man's name was Francis Ngannou, now one of the most feared heavyweights in MMA history. But back then he had nothing. No money, no gym, no training. He worked in silence. He slept on gym floors. He trained with broken equipment. No announcements, no crying, no explanations. Just silent, brutal effort. Years later, the world watched him knock men out cold, and suddenly they all wanted to know his story. But by then it was too late. The work had already been done. That's what happens when you push hard and say nothing. Now let's take a step back into history. In ancient Sparta, Boys were taken from their families at age 7 and thrown into the agog, a brutal training regime that forged warriors from the inside out. Do you know what the Spartans hated more than weakness? Talking too much. They trained their boys to speak less and act more. That's where the word laconic comes from Laconia, the region of Sparta. They believed words were only necessary when backed by action. When the Persians told the Spartans, "Our arrows will block out the sun," a Spartan general simply replied, "Then we will fight in the shade." No drama, no emotional outburst, just calm, focused silence and lethal execution. That's a standard you must bring into your own life. When you're grinding at work, say nothing. When you're building your body, say nothing. When you're starting a new business, say nothing. When you're hurt, rejected, or doubted, say nothing. Not because you're weak, but because silence is your strength. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be respected. And respect isn't given to those who talk. It's given to those who deliver. I want you to remember this. The man who talks too much is always at risk of exposing the fact that he's doing too little. But the man who says nothing leaves room for mystery. And mystery, my friend, is power. When you move in silence, people can't predict you. They don't know if you're winning or losing. They don't know if you're preparing for war or walking away from it. And that confusion makes them respect your presence even more. Let's look at another modern-day giant, Keanu Reeves, one of the most respected men in Hollywood. He's made millions. He's walked through personal loss, heartbreak, betrayal. But you'll never hear him whining or explaining. He just shows up, does the work, treats people with respect, and lets his legacy speak. There's power in that. Men today are so desperate to be heard. But the Stoic man doesn't need to be loud. He just needs to be effective. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop trying to convince the world of your worth. Show it, silently, relentlessly, daily. Now understand this. Silence doesn't mean weakness, it means control. Because the man who can stay calm, quiet, and consistent when everything around him is chaos, that man is dangerous. He's no longer ruled by emotion. He's ruled by principle, and that is the most masculine energy you can carry in this world. Think about your own life. Have you ever noticed that when you stop talking about your problems and start fixing them in silence, things start to change? People start treating you differently. You become more attractive, more focused, more unpredictable. And that's what drives people crazy. They can no longer read you. They no longer control your emotions. You become something rare, a man who cannot be shaken, not because he says he's strong, but because he shows it. If you're still trying to prove yourself, then you haven't built enough yet. Let that sink in, and if you're going through a dark season right now, don't post it. Don't explain it. Don't call everyone for pity. Push hard, say nothing. Watch everything change, work on your mind, train your body, fix your discipline, silence the weakness, and watch how the world begins to adjust to the new version of you. Remember, no one respects a man who talks too much, but they all admire the one who worked so hard. They had no choice but to notice. I want you to sit with this thought. What if the only thing keeping you from the next level is the noise you keep making about how hard life is? What if silence is the doorway to your strength? Drop a comment below. I'm building. I don't need to explain. Chapter 2. Rejection is a gift. If you stay silent and rise, most men don't realize this. Rejection is not your enemy. It's your training ground. When you're rejected, ignored, or disrespected, your instinct might be to respond, to argue, to prove something. But that's the test. The true test is this. Can you be rejected and still keep building in silence? Because if you can resist the urge to defend yourself, if you can turn that pain into fuel without saying a single word, then you're not just hurt, you're evolving. Let me show you a man who did exactly that. His name was Michael Jordan. one of the greatest athletes to ever live. But before the championships, the fame, and the billion-dollar empire, he was just a skinny, high school kid who got cut from the varsity basketball team. The coach told him he wasn't good enough. He could have complained. He could have quit. But he didn't. He just went home, stayed silent, and trained harder than anyone else. He cried in private. He worked in the dark. He said nothing. And the next time they saw him, he wasn't just good. He was unstoppable. That's what happens when a man turns rejection into fuel, quietly. And that's what you must learn to do in your own life. Whether it's a woman walking away from you, a job denying your worth, friends doubting your potential, your power isn't in responding. It's in rebuilding quietly. Real power doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It rises without permission. Let's go back in time. Theodore Roosevelt, a sickly, weak, asthmatic boy who was rejected by life itself. The doctors told him he wouldn't survive childhood. Everyone expected him to fade away. But instead of complaining, he built what he called the strenuous life. He began lifting weights, hiking mountains, boxing, fighting, reading. He created the man he wanted to be, without fanfare, without applause. He let his life speak louder than the opinions that surrounded him. And that sickly boy grew up to become a US president, a war hero, and a symbol of masculine strength. He didn't cry about what was missing. He built with what he had. And most importantly, Hawkeye, he said very little. This is the model. Don't react to rejection. Refocus. That girl who ghosted you, let her go. That boss who overlooked your value, let it happen. That fake friend who betrayed your loyalty, don't even reply. You don't need to explain yourself to people who made the decision to misunderstand you. What you need is discipline and work, real work, invisible work, unseen pain, and the quiet storm that builds inside a man who doesn't run from the fire, but walks through it silently. There's something deeply masculine about rebuilding without saying a word. You go to the gym and nobody notices. You start a business and no one supports it. You study, grind, improve, and every time you want to say something, you don't. Because one day they'll all look up and see that everything changed. And the only thing you did differently was stay silent and stay dangerous. Do you know why this works? Because the world is addicted to attention. People today want sympathy, not strength. They want comments, not character. But you're different. You're not building for likes. You're building for legacy. So take the rejection, take it all, and let it make you stronger, not louder. Let it pull something out of you. You're not weakness, but warrior energy. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. So when they insult you, don't become bitter. When they leave, don't chase. When they doubt, don't argue. Instead, train harder, work smarter, heal quietly, and elevate in a way that speaks without words. Let me ask you, who are you when nobody's watching? That's the man that matters, not the one who posts every gym workout, not the one who records every success, but the one who keeps going when there's no recognition, no support, and no comfort. That's the man who changes everything, quietly. Let me give you one last modern story. A young man named Chris Gardner once lived homeless on the streets of San Francisco with his baby son. No job, no money, no family, just hunger, rejection, and a broken dream. But he never cursed the world. He never begged for pity. He just worked, studied, slept in bathrooms, showed up every day. He pushed hard, said nothing, and everything changed. That story was turned into the movie The Pursuit of Happiness. But remember, the cameras came after the struggle, not during. That's the order. Work first, results later, respect last. So if you've been rejected and if you're hurting, if you're tired of being overlooked, good. That's your moment, that's your training ground, but you don't need to make a speech. You don't need to call anyone. You don't need to prove anything right now. You just need to show up, push, stay silent, and let the silence build your strength. Drop a comment below. I'm using rejection to rise. Chapter 3. Master your emotions and control the entire game. Every man has been there or betrayed, humiliated, underestimated. The first instinct? explode, defend yourself, tell your side, but that's what weak men do. Strong men don't speak to be heard, they act to be understood. They master their emotions not to impress the world, but to stay in control of themselves. Because when a man masters his emotions, he becomes untouchable. He becomes the storm behind the silence. Let me tell you a story. There was a Roman general named Scipio Africanus. He defeated the legendary Hannibal in the Second Punic War. But not just with brute strength, he used emotional discipline as a weapon. After winning the Battle of Zama, the Romans expected him to gloat, to celebrate, to humiliate the Carthaginians. But Scipio did the opposite. He treated his enemies with dignity. He refused to let rage dictate his rule. He mastered his fire and used it to build, not destroy. Because Scipio knew something most men never learn. The man who cannot control his anger will never control his empire. This is your empire, your life, your mind, your mission. And the moment you let emotions run wild, it all collapses. Modern men lose everything, not because of a lack of talent, but because they speak too quickly, argue too often, and react too emotionally. But a Stoic man, he learns to stay still while the world loses its mind. He doesn't argue with women who test him. He doesn't whine when plans fall apart. He doesn't chase anyone who walks away. He simply gets better, stronger, colder, quieter. That's not suppression, and it's power. You see, emotional men are predictable. Silent men are dangerous, because when your opponent can't read your next move, they panic, they throw accusations, they scream, they test you. And when you don't react, you win. Every time. Let's bring it into real life. A man named David Goggins was called slow, stupid, and weak. People laughed at his dream of becoming a Navy SEAL. He could have fought back with words, but he chose pain over pride. He ran miles with broken legs. He studied harder than anyone around him. He suffered in silence. No tweets, no speeches, just war. Now, he's a best-selling author, ultra-endurance athlete, and one of the hardest men alive, because he learned to master himself before trying to master the world. That's your mission too. It starts small. When someone disrespects you, breathe. When life slaps you down, stand up quietly. When she leaves, don't post, don't beg. Let her feel the silence. Let the universe watch as you grow in darkness, because the man who controls himself controls everything. And yes, it's hard, but that's the point. Hard things shape real men. Comfort breeds softness, but pressure creates warriors. Do you want to know what separates a man who wins from a man who stays stuck? The ability to keep going without needing validation, applause, or pity. The ability to suffer silently and rise unseen. And when the time is right, to speak through results, not words. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic emperors, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This quote should be etched into every man's mind. You can't control how people treat you. You can't control how women see you. You can't control the betrayals, the setbacks, or the storms, but you can control how you respond. And if that response is calm, disciplined, and focused, nothing can stop you. I want you to imagine this. You walk into a room where people once laughed at you, but you don't say a word. You're in better shape. You speak less. You dress well. You move with purpose. You don't mention the pain. You just radiate strength. And the same people who doubted you, now they feel small, not because you attacked them, but because your silence is louder than their judgment ever was. That's the quiet power of emotional mastery. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to scream, argue, or defend. All you need to do is build, heal, and stay calm. Every single day. Control your reactions, and you control your direction. Lose control, and you give the wheel to the very people who don't deserve to drive your life. Never forget this. The most dangerous man in the room isn't the one shouting. It's the one sitting quietly, watching, thinking, preparing. That's who you must become. Drop a comment below. I control my emotions. I control my future. Chapter 4. Build in silence and become the man they can't ignore. There comes a point in every man's life when he must decide, will I continue talking about who I want to be? Or will I start building it in silence, brick by brick? while no one is watching? Because silence is where the real work happens. It's where you sweat without applause, where you bleed without sympathy, where you build without praise. And most men will never understand this, because most men are addicted to noise and they need to be seen, heard, praised, and liked. But you're going to be different. You're going to disappear into discipline. You're going to let your results speak instead of your opinions. You're going to master yourself. And in doing so, build a life that demands respect without saying a single word. Let's go back in time to a man named Alexander Hamilton, born into poverty, abandoned, called a bastard son of a whore. But he didn't fight back with insults. He fought back with work. He wrote, he read, he studied, he trained. And by the time he was 19, he wrote essays so powerful they made grown men believe he was 40. He didn't scream, he didn't whine, and he didn't ask for help. He worked silently until the world had no choice but to notice, and that's the secret. Build so powerfully in silence that eventually the world is forced to listen. Not because you begged, not because you argued, but because you earned it. We live in a world that wants attention more than it wants legacy, but attention fades, legacy echoes through generations, and legacy is built by the man who pushes hard, says nothing, and outlasts the noise. Let me give you one more true story. A man named Jocko Willink, a Navy SEAL commander who fought in Iraq. Do you know what made him a legend? It wasn't because he bragged, it wasn't because he shouted, it was because he lived by a code. Wake up early, train hard, lead in silence, take responsibility for everything. He didn't wait for life to be fair, he became too powerful for excuses to matter. And that's what you must do. Stop waiting to be understood. Stop waiting for the apology. Stop waiting for the recognition. You owe yourself your next level, and no one is coming to hand it to you. So here's the challenge. Get into the gym, even if no one sees it. Work on your goals, even if no one claps. Improve your habits, even if no one believes in you. Read, study, work, grow, and say nothing. Let them think you're losing. Let them think you're quiet because you're broken. Let them think they've won. Because one day, the version of you that steps out of the dark will shake the ground they stand on. And when that day comes, don't even remind them of how they treated you. Just walk past them, built, calm, unstoppable, because the best revenge is elevation. Now let's talk legacy. You are not just doing this for you. You are building the kind of man your future son can look at and say, that's what strength looks like. You're creating the foundation that others can stand on, and it will not be done through rage. It will be done through resilience. That's what Stoic strength is. Not empty words, but quiet impact. Not loud victories, but unshakable presence. Not external validation, but internal discipline. Push hard, say nothing, watch everything change, because when you truly adopt this mindset, something strange happens. You no longer need to tell the world who you are. You walk into a room and your energy does it for you. You speak few words and people lean in to hear them. You move with calm purpose and it shifts the room. That is real power, that is real masculinity. That is what every great man, from Marcus Aurelius to Frederick Douglass to Nelson Mandela, understood. Control yourself, and you control everything. It's not just about going silent, it's about what you do in the silence. This path is not easy. There will be nights when you doubt yourself. There will be days when you feel forgotten, unseen, unappreciated. But remember this: every seed grows in darkness before it breaks through the light. You are that seed. Every rep you do in silence, every book you read with no recognition, every day you wake up when no one's watching, it's all building something unstoppable. And the world doesn't need another man who talks too much. It needs a man who moves differently, who heals without pity, who grows without praise, who leads without noise, a man who pushes hard, says nothing and changes everything. So take this message seriously, lock it into your soul. This is your call to discipline, your call to manhood, your call to legacy. drop a comment below. I'm building in silence. They'll see soon enough. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe if you're committed to becoming the strongest version of yourself. Your story is just beginning. Keep pushing, stay silent. Let the world feel your comeback without you saying a single word.